Well, hey everybody, happy Thursday, December 26th. Hope your Christmas was wonderful, or whatever holiday you celebrated, that you are having a great December. It was quiet for us. We have a tiny immediate family here in Central Florida, but we had a good time. And years ago, we used to get together with about probably 10 or 12 of my family members, but we're all over the country now. And let me know how your Christmas was. I would love to hear. So today we're going to talk about trust building in the law firm and what can break it down and what can build it up. Obviously, what breaks it down, the opposite of building it up will be the opposite of what breaks it down. But I've been in law firms where trust was eliminated, and that was in my first job, but it wasn't overall. 99.9% of my experience in my first job was spot on great. It was beautiful. So I was absorbing things like a sponge. That's what I want for you, that first job. That takes knowing how to interview properly, okay? And the questions that you need to ask. They're going to ask you some very typical questions, but you need to know what to ask. One of the things that will break trust for me is gossip mongers as co-workers, and sometimes attorneys. That will break the trust, and I'm immediately not going to trust people in that law firm. That has happened. It has happened in every workplace I've ever been in. There are certain people that have big mouths and they speak out of turn, and they're there for the sheer joy of tormenting people. What can I say? I don't like working with them, and I know you probably don't either. So I like to get the lay of the land, so to speak, when I go into a new place of employment, and I like to do my work, act pleasant, but I like to understand who is doing what in that law firm before I start getting involved in anything, and talking about my family and all that stuff. I try not to give them, the gossip mongers, food or fuel. Okay, so I like to check things out first. That's wisdom. Okay, so take that to heart when I tell you this. Sit back, do your work, and be pleasant, build bridges, but don't lay that instant trust that you're going to trust everybody that you work with until you know their character. Okay, and they'll show you their character. I would say give them 60 to 90 days. No one can put on an act that long. And so they'll show their true colors. Doesn't matter what type of workplace it is, but don't add fuel to that fire. Step back. Don't be part of anybody's madness. Step back. Okay, excuse me. I love being able to work in a peaceful environment. I don't suffer fools lightly. I don't suffer screamers. I don't put up with bad behaviors. If I ask the right questions in an interview, I can avoid probably 90 to 95% of craziness in any workplace. But sometimes there's good acting that goes on in an interview, and you go in and voila, it's not a great place to work. So what do? Well, if you want to come home crazed every night, you stay there. But if you want to just start looking for another job, that would probably be wise. It depends on what level of uncomfortable it is. I don't put up with bad behaviors. I don't, from coworkers or the attorneys. And if management doesn't do anything about a coworker who is causing an uproar in a place of employment, then or another attorney who's causing an uproar, then I won't stay, because it affects everything outside of the law firm. It affects your personal life, and I won't do it. And that again is wisdom from me to you. Okay, so you are worth everything. You are worth having respect, and it is great if you can trust people. It is the optimum workplace. It doesn't always happen 100%, obviously, because people are human and they haven't learned life lessons, unfortunately. And I've had to learn not to share certain things with people because they were just waiting for nuggets that they could blab around the law firm. It's child's play. It's 7th grade gossip mongers. So, or people stirring the pot to cause trouble for you personally. It's not just in law firms. It happens if you've worked in other places. You've seen it. It's just human beings. So I want you to ask yourself some questions, okay? And this goes to your personal life too. But your current beliefs about trust. How do you define trust? What does trust mean to you? You could write these down in a notebook. Like, you know, I always show you this, but a notebook or a journal. Number 2, who do you trust the most and why? Number 3, who do you trust the least and why? Number 4, who are you certain trusts you, and how do you know they trust you? Number 5, what causes you to stop trusting others? Now that's an incredibly important one. 6, what actions do you believe you regularly take that builds trust with others? I think that's important in the workplace and personally. Number 7, what actions do you believe you regularly take that breaks trust with others? I think in my own life personally, I've broken trust by speaking out of turn. Monica, I'm reading your comment. How do you deal with clients who scream and yell when it's their lack of interaction with you, not listening to the attorneys, and then calling back asking the same questions? Let me see, it's cutting it off here. Let's see if I can get it up here. Oh, let me see if I can. Okay, well, geez. Okay, let's see. Not listening to the attorneys and then calling back asking the same questions that they have already been given the answer to, but get mad when you respond with what the attorney already told them. I think that's difficult, to be sure. I tried, it's not, first of all, I understand who's paying my salary, and it's the client. And that comes from being raised in a retail Italian deli and a German deli, and owning my own businesses before I became before I dove into the legal field. So I know that when the clients walk in, my customers walked in, whatever they purchased, that helped support my business, right? My father was a supermarket manager, and so he talked about this with me, and I would lose my patience. I worked for a veterinarian, and you talk about a tough job. The people who work as receptionists and or vet techs in a veterinarian's office, dealing with the clients is the hardest thing, because the animals are easy breezy, but the clients and their pets, and I'm a pet owner, we get emotional about our pets, right? So I had to learn and I learned primarily working as a cashier in a supermarket and then working for a veterinarian, how to deal with the problems all day long. I answered the same questions all day long. And I had some wacky questions come up that I had to then be a detective and ask the people to explain. We are the people in between, we're the people in between, obviously, the client and the attorney. And the attorneys don't want to deal with that, so we have to, as paralegals, right? We have to practice as much patience as possible. What I found is that if the client understood, and this doesn't always work, but if the client understood that I had their best interest at heart and that I was trying to find an answer for them, then they usually calm down. But I very rarely, I can count on one hand how many people screamed at me on the phone. I had hardly any scream at me. I don't, there's not much to do about that, but try to calm them down. But saying please calm down doesn't work. Saying I can tell you what the attorney just told you, like you're doing, but it cannot, the tone of your voice is everything. The tone of your voice is everything. And if it's done in a not robotic, but a warmer way, and if they're still screaming, there's not much you can do about it, really. So, I wish I could snap my fingers and people would be gone because they're so frustrated. I've worked in the bankruptcy field, and people's financial, their livelihoods are going down the tubes, and so much is crashing in an area of law like that. But it's a very interesting area of law to work in. Personal injury is interesting, and I've worked in that too. But when when your very young daughter passes away, and I've lost a child, an adult child. When a very young child, it doesn't matter, you lose a child, the parents aren't going to be satisfied with what those answers are because of the loss they've had to endure. So it depends on what the client is having to endure. All those emotions are just coming to the surface. Not much we can do about it. Not much we can do. I wouldn't suffer through any type of threats and that type of thing. That's when you speak with the attorney, and that's when you get together with the attorney or before, and depends on how open your attorney is, not regarding threats, but to this craziness of the screaming and trying to curtail it. Sometimes it's much easier to scream at a staff member than and then they'll cut it and won't scream at an attorney. But I honestly, I have not experienced a lot of screaming from clients at all. And I worked in a lot of different areas of law, as I just said. 2 areas were really, where they're watching a lot of horrible things that happening to them. So, okay, so in my first job, which I've told you guys before, when I interviewed, I was told that at the 6-month point, I would have a review. Not that, of course, not that it was set in stone that I would get a raise. Of course, they couldn't say that in an interview. But it was said that I would, by the managing partner of the law firm, who's the manager of the law firm, that I would, and I mean the attorney manager, that I would have a review. Now, I was doing very well. I was soaking everything up. Never came late, never left early. I was doing a bang-up job, working trials with one attorney. By that time, by the 6-month mark, I had worked 3 trials in my first job. So I was learning, and doing very well. But I was also the receptionist, legal secretary, and errand runner. So a bit much, and had to do all the filing. It was a bit overwhelming, but I knew that once I had a year under my belt, I wouldn't be staying. However, trust was broken by the 7th month. I had not had a review. I, of course, mentioned that to the paralegal, and then she asked me to talk to the managing partner, which I did. He said he didn't remember saying that. So this is what happens when you don't take notes during an interview and date them. And that didn't mean that then because he didn't remember that, then he'd go, oh, okay, well then I'll give you a review now. He didn't. And I needed a raise. I was working for a low salary to get my foot in the door. And these are all lessons for you. Write down everything that's said. But when it all comes to it, if they don't want to do a review, they don't have to. It's not like a contract was signed, okay? But what does that do to the trust factor between you and the attorney? Well, between me and the attorney, that trust was breached. That trust was broken. So am I going to trust them? And I felt that I didn't want to stay to the year point because I felt I had learned enough to trade up on another job. I think wisdom in hindsight would be stay for a year and then trade up and increase your salary and move on and learn some more stuff. And but I left at the 7th month mark because trust was broken. And it was only between me and the managing partner, not the other attorneys. Now, if the other attorneys had wisdom, they would have said, let's do the review then, but they weren't going to go against that other attorney. Okay, so there's politics involved with partners, and that attorney that said he didn't say that, he doesn't want to lose face, and it would almost be, like it would appear that he was lying. From his reaction, I have to tell you, I don't really think he remembered. I think he was green around, he was green concerning doing interviews to begin with. He had no experience in doing interviews. So I think that was the case. And I had come from running a business and for 4.5 years, and I had to hire people, let them go, hire them, let them go. So I understood what to ask them and how to manage them and all of that, okay? And so I just had to chalk that up to being green and not knowing what he was doing. And it wasn't deliberate. I really don't think it was. And sometimes it is, but I don't think that was. So trust was broken, though. There are other ways that trust is broken when, if you need a certain time off and it's on the calendar and then somebody backs off and says, now you can't have it off. I mean, it's things like that. So, and the thing is, we have to look in the mirror when it comes to trust. What are some areas that we need to clean up about ourselves? Are we breaking trust with our coworkers? I've had a coworker come in and ask me for advice, and to be honest, it was to get me in trouble. And so being much older than this coworker, I knew that was the case, and her attorney was a little off. And so it was just a crazy scenario in one law firm. And most of my law firms have been terrific. It's just that you run into these scenarios. That's why I teach you what I do in my course. I teach you on here to avoid the pitfalls. Okay, and I'm sharing some of my experiences. If you love gossip, and you love to talk about client files, and you love to talk about each other, and that's really junior high garbage. And if that's how you're running your life, I would say let's change it today, because it's not going to fly in the law firm. I mean, it may in some, and everybody will get off on it for a while, but it has a way of backfiring on you when you're like that, you know, and rightly so, because it's not a pretty way to be. So take the high road. And I walked in one law firm. It was Gossip Central right away, day one. They reared their ugly heads, and I had to back up. I did not want to leave this job. I wanted to keep it, which I did. And I just let them have their playground, sometimes at my expense, but they could play around like that. None of the attorneys were curtailing it, which is a mistake. And then eventually it was curtailed after I went to a different law firm, and a few of them got into some deep water, deep trouble. So take the high road and build bridges, which is really building trust, building goodwill as much as you can. Don't work in a place that treats you incorrectly and treats you badly. Nobody said you had to do that. And if you live in a town where there are no jobs available, there's nothing I can say about that. But if you live in a town where there are other jobs available, then look at that seriously. And don't be afraid to change your environment, because building trust and having a peaceful workplace as much as possible is everything. Every job will have a certain amount of stress. We can't get rid of that altogether, but it just is the way it is. But there's nothing like working as a team together, nothing. And I've gone into a place where people weren't really working as a team. What they were doing was working as a team with each other to hide what they weren't getting done. And so the attorneys wouldn't find out. And then all that had to be, I found out what they were doing with filing, and I wasn't going to go tell. I just said, let's solve this. Let's get rid of this so we don't have to think about it, deal with it. And that's what we did. So you can come in, and that took 2 months to get to that point, because there were people in there that were stopping that. They wanted the status quo. And when you come in as somebody who wants to improve it, you have to bide your time and build trust that you're not trying to undercut people and rise as the shining star. Don't come off that way when you go into a law firm. You will burn bridges down. There will be no bridges. And a great thing to do is to build that. That's building trust. Okay? So if you have any questions whatsoever to ask here, then do it now or post it later, and I will see what I can do. I'm not going to give a lot of advice regarding your current workplace, because my advice is helping people. So I could sit here all day long and talk about how you can change things in your current workplace, but it is common sense. And if it isn't where the attorneys are assisting you in that, I've had an attorney say, look, if a client acts up, let me know and I will talk with them. You can't get any better backup than that. Okay? And that's the perfect scenario. I've had that. So when an attorney puts his or her head in the sand regarding client behavior, that's wrong. Okay, that's not how an employer should react. That they need to, what's coming out from a client is high frustration. And if the communication with the client is not proactive and constant, then that's harmful, and the management inside the law firm has to be tight, and it is not always. It really isn't, because while those of us who were raised in a business like myself I saw mistakes in my grandparents' store. They couldn't have really strangers work with them. They really just had family members working with them because they felt they could trust the family members. Well, that's not always the truth, but they felt that's the only people they could trust. I feel that with a lot of employers, and having been one, there's a distrust, but I tried to have my employees, because I had mostly teenagers as employees, part-timers, I tried to be a mentor to them, to teach them the right things to do, and if they can't show up, they need to call me, and that type of thing, from the basics. So showing up a little early to your jobs and a lot of other things builds trust, but trust is a 180 from the employer. From your side, you want to be able to trust your employer to a point. And that is not always the case, right? So will you have 100% ability to trust your employer? I don't think so. But I think that you can build trust to a good place. And they'll trust you when they don't have to correct your mistakes, and your product that you put out every day, your documents, are A+ and not C-, D-, and have mistakes, and you don't look at the attorney as a proofreader, and instead you take that responsibility and you're accountable for everything that you're given to the attorney to read and sign off on, that it is perfection, and you're not filing stuff with the court that looks like trash, then you're going to build trust. Okay? And if you handle things in a mature way, you will build trust. But the thing is, then, is that not rewarded, but is it acknowledged by your employer? That's important. And sometimes there's not wisdom in that area on the side of the employer and the employee. Okay, so answer those questions, those 7 questions I posed in the beginning of this video, and be honest with yourself. What do you need to clean up in yourself? We know, working with people, that there can be, craziness in a workplace, law firm or not. And that's just not acceptable to me. Okay? It wasn't acceptable when I started out 30 years ago, and it's not acceptable now. The one thing that I learned over many years of marriage is asking, what can we do to solve the problem? And I would ask the attorney that, Monica. It's like, what can we do to solve this problem of the client screaming all the time? And what can be changed? What needs to be changed? It could be that there's just nothing that can be changed with this one particular client. I've had a client in bankruptcy that just would not answer questions that had to be answered about a business they were in. And it was a stalling tactic, but it had to be answered, because if you don't answer me, you're going to answer the trustee at the 341 meeting, and so I would say it's either answer now or pay later, and it's not going to be pretty later. It's getting with a client, for some of us, when we're asking questions as paralegals of a client, getting to the truth of the matter is definitely like playing detective, but that's the fun part for me. Not fun that I hope to catch somebody, but fun that I have the facts correct before it goes to a courtroom situation. You don't want to find out in the courtroom. You want to find out ahead of time what the facts are. So, yeah, there's frustration with clients, and if I were the client and I wasn't getting, say, and I'm just making this up, if I was not communicated with on a regular basis and apprised of how my case was going, I would be fed up, because I'm paying dinero. I am paying money to this attorney, which then in turn pays the paralegal's salary. So why would I be happy over that? That's one scenario. Doesn't mean it's, Monica, that's your scenario. But there's frustration that builds over something. And it could be, it's just they're fed up that they even have to hire an attorney. You can't help that. So, okay, so I hope this was helpful. Trust is not easily won. It can be easily broken. And we want to avoid that scenario. We want to build it at all costs. But I want you to be able to work in a place where you can, to a large degree, trust what's going on and trust how the work is being done and how the attorney is working and your coworkers are. Nothing will be utopia. Nothing. No such place exists. You know, it could be pretty good and you're working like a team of finely tuned team, but that's a beautiful thing when it happens. Have a great one. Let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. Don't forget that the Paralegal Inner Circle class registration begins on January 15th. So you can look above, right at the top of the page for information and click on the link. Get the complimentary items on the website at paralegalcoffeetalk.com. You've got the 19 alternative paralegal careers list. A free chapter of my book, Legal Break-In, is there. You can just look at the top of the website. And a goals journal. So let's see what else. And if you need the book itself, the Legal Break-In, then you'll see another link for Legal Break-In up there. And a link will be appearing about 2:15 or so on this page too. So, but you can go right to the website and check everything out there, okay? And there's a great, if you didn't get an email, then go on the paralegalcoffeetalk.com website and look at the blog post that's there for a discussion on or an outline of SMART goals and what are they, and it will take you to it'll take, just go to that page and it'll be right there. Okay, all right, so have a great day and I will talk to you hopefully in tomorrow's video. Take care, have a good week, talk to you later.